Hello, hello. Welcome everyone to another Joy of SharePoint webinar. Glad to see you all here. This is officially the second webinar in my This is the Way series. I'm already missing that show. I'm ready for it to come back on. So I have with me today Ashley Rogers. Hello, Ashley.
Hey everybody, I'm super glad to be here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. Actually, we don't have any time. It's straight up 11 o'clock. But if you need to make a last minute caffeine run, I see we still got some folks trickling in. So take a moment, get you some caffeine. My number one rule, you can't do SharePoint without caffeine. Now, I know there are people out there that are trying to live healthier lifestyles and it maybe removed caffeine from your diet. I don't understand you, but I kind of admire that. I think it's awesome. You can live without it, but hey, right? Takes all kinds. Now, Ashley, you're not a hardcore coffee girl, are you? You like your tea.
That's right. But the trick is to get the really, really black tea that has the extra caffeine in it. So I have the ones that says extra bold. I might as well be a coffee drinker.
You're an Irish breakfast tea kind of girl then.
That's exactly right.
I love it.
Works for me.
That works. That works. So let me see. We still got a few people coming in, but let's just chat for a minute about why we're here and what we're talking about today, in case you're not on Twitter at all. Um, we're talking about this is the way of the accidental SharePoint professional. And I have actually gotten some odd looks when I talk about this concept with people, but Ashley and I are going to get into this in more detail as we go, obviously, but not everyone wanted to be a SharePoint person when they grew up. And it's shocking to me. Oh, I see Mark saying hi. What do we got here? Yorkshire teal's the best. Okay, good to know. That's a hashtag. I might have to go follow that hashtag later. Welcome, Mark. But yeah, so we're in this journey together, right? We are here to take this thing called SharePoint and make it the best that it can be for our organization. And it's a little tricky sometimes, especially if you don't even know how you got here or exactly why. Maybe you know how, but you still look around sometimes and wonder, how did I end up being kind of this IT person? It wasn't on purpose. So that's what we're going to get into, especially if I could move this box out of the way of my slides. There we go. Yes, please advance to the next slide. Thank you. So Ashley, welcome again. Here is her contact information. If you're not following at Ash Rogers on Twitter, do it. Just do it. I will even excuse you to go pick up your phone and go follow her on Twitter right now. She has excellent uses of GIFs in her tweets, I will say. There was a Firefly GIF today. I fell in love all over again. But she and I work together at Pate Group. She is, I call her our flow queen. She has gone from not just being a SharePoint professional, I shouldn't say just, because we all know there is no just to that, but she also goes over into the Power Platform, which is just makes SharePoint better than it can be on its own. And she is also a technical project lead. So she helps us wrangle our clients. If I haven't said thank you for that lately, thank you.
Oh, you are so welcome. My pleasure.
All right, so Ashley, I'm going to go ahead and flip over to the next slide. So this was your kind of theme. This is a session that I have seen you present at Office 365 Saturdays, and she came to me and she was like, I've got this thing. I think it'd be a good webinar. I'm doing it as a session. I was like, absolutely. So who is this for and what is this about?
Yeah, so the session that I do on, at Office 365 Saturdays, that's really, I do a top 5 tools for newbies, and that's for admins and developers. So I group them together, even though typically there's separate tracks for admins, IT folks, and also for developers. There's separate tracks usually, but I group you guys together in my session because I find that when you're first starting out in SharePoint, and maybe you're a little lost and you're not really sure why you've inherited SharePoint or what exactly you're doing, there's a lot of overlap. So I've identified some personas that I think the majority of new admins and new devs fall into, but this is really for you guys who are new to it, and who really don't know maybe where to start off with.
I love
So,
it.
yeah, I was gonna say that this is really has to do with where you enter SharePoint and then where it leads you after. And so you can see Joy is now showing our three main personas. There could be more, but I think that if you don't feel today that you fall into one of these three buckets, I can almost guarantee you know somebody who does.
Well, when I look at this slide, I'll tell you that end user one speaks to me because I was working with a client, pretty large client, but they were just trying to get their hands around SharePoint. They just rolled out SharePoint 2013, so this was a little while ago. And there is a lady that I worked with. She was in HR, right? She was deep in HR. She did employee onboarding. She did job posting. She managed processes inside of HR and was given SharePoint. And she was like, oh, this is a great tool to manage my processes. And she played around with the built-in workflows. Um, I wish I could, there was a way for you to send me an eye roll if you ever played with the built-in SharePoint workflows. They were great for simple things, but it usually left us wanting more. And that client ended up implementing a third-party workflow tool, and she got hold of it and she automated onboarding. And we don't like to talk about it a lot, but also offboarding. She automated internal job postings, and she took this tool, she built in metadata and managed the sites, and she did amazing things. She is now in IT. That's not where she thought she was going to go. She was very happy in HR and very well suited to it, but she got hold of this tool and did things that even IT wasn't ready to do. Now that's what she does for their whole corporation. So she started out as an HR end user. And I'll be the first to say, we in IT, if you are not an IT person and you're here because you see maybe you're starting to go in this direction, I am going to ask for your forgiveness, because sometimes in IT we say the word user or end user and it doesn't sound very complimentary. But these end users, these business users that grab hold of the tool and go build things and make stuff happen, I mean, that's really where SharePoint starts to shine for the departments. And you are invaluable to the maturity of SharePoint as your intranet.
So I do want to make a comment here as well, if we're just a quick comment on the end user, and this buzzword that you guys might be hearing now about the citizen developer. Um, so a citizen developer, that concept has been around for a little while, but it's really getting a lot of visibility now with the Power Platform. And I have to make a quick plug for that, automating your processes, as an end user, and you're becoming somebody who you might consider themselves a citizen developer, you're living somewhere between the business and IT. And I really do feel like IT is now starting to recognize that as a real role. So, you are invaluable, as you become this. And so living between the business and IT is very important. It definitely serves a very important role.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So our next one here is actually my favorite. So I came up with this guy, the IT pro who inherits SharePoint after the consultants left, because I legitimately had this experience with one of our clients where somebody reached out to me and said, hey, we had consultants in here who built this process, who built this solution, and then they left because the project was over and nobody knew what to do with it. And I'm kind of in IT, so they gave it to me. But this guy was supporting servers and he was in like hardware. Um, and he wanted nothing to do with SharePoint at all. And it was sort of like when you go to Thanksgiving and because you have a laptop, Uncle Joey asks you to set up his iPad or whatever. It's just, oh, computers, so you must be okay with inheriting SharePoint. So, I had this particular person come to me and say, I need help, I need training. And it was just one of those situations where, try to get him up to speed as fast as possible, to be as efficient as possible to get his new job done. So I do love the IT pro who doesn't love SharePoint.
And that's a lot of them. My boss, when I was a very brand new SharePoint farm administrator, he was the Exchange and AD admin. I would walk into his office, Fred, if you're listening, this will always stay with me. Well, what would walk into his office and he would pre-position his hands over his ears. He's like, if you say SharePoint, I'm not listening, right? Because they got this thing, they weren't sure what to do with it. Here, do it. Just deal with it. I don't even want to talk about it. Oh, it's the redheaded stepchild in IT so many times. And then we also have our project managers. And I didn't really put these two and two together, Ashley, until you pointed this out to me. But yeah, they've got a lot of stuff that they're trying to manage. It's all over the place. And okay, so I got stuff. I've got a lot of clients. I've got a lot of data. I've got a lot of forms and documents. They see the ability to manage that cleanly inside of document libraries. And even, so you've heard me say many times, folks, folders are the F word in SharePoint, but document sets, yeah, they're folders, but they're folders on steroids. They can make some of that document management a lot easier. So maybe they grab onto that and they use it and they build it out and they have their metadata and they make it work. And then boom, they're now doing SharePoint for other project managers, for other areas of the business. They're now going to IT with requirements and helping figure this out for the rest of the business. We were actually talking about our dear project manager, Holly. We could totally see her. She has a technical mind too on top of it. So totally see her kind of jumping in and starting to just use it to make her life better whenever she needs. Especially because we don't do that for her because we're doing client work, right? The cobbler's children never have good shoes.
Isn't that the truth?
It's the truth. It's the truth. So let me think. I actually have a poll here. I'm curious. Let me select the poll and I'm going to launch the poll. I'm curious for you, ladies and gents that are on the call, on the webinar. Did you really think you were going to be doing SharePoint? Maybe you knew what SharePoint was, maybe you didn't. Right now I'm at 50-50, nope, and ha 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 ha. Oh, I'm actually seeing some yeses. Oh my gosh, that's exciting. Ashley and I are going to share our stories. We cover a bit of ground when it comes to how we got to where we are now, but I'm always fascinated to hear the stories of where people were and then they ended up in IT or as business liaison for IT. And I'd be interested too. So in questions or in chat, wherever you prefer, I would love to know from you all what you thought you were going to be when you got out of school, or what did you want to be when you grew up? Probably not many of us said, I wanted to be a SharePoint person. I mean, I wanted to be an archaeologist because Indiana Jones was so cool. And then my dad convinced me I wouldn't be able to make a living. So, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll here in just a minute. A trainer, like a physical trainer or a technology trainer, or what kind of trainer? All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this poll down. So 10% of you said yes, tech, awesome. Yes, I wanted to do SharePoint in my professional career. 53% said nope. And then 37 of you just laughed because it was just so funny. You would even think to do that. So I'll tell you my story. I think I'm up first. Am I up first? I'm up first. So I still sometimes feel like I am, a self-taught computer geek. I poked at computers because they were really cool, right? I actually went to college on a drama and theater scholarship, and I studied drama and theater and a little bit of law and a little bit of psychology and all kinds of fun stuff. not IT, definitely not IT. Um, but as so many of us, what I went to college for really didn't impact what I did to make money. So I ended up in the mortgage and banking industry and I hated it. I hated it so much. I worked with some wonderful people, but I did not love what I did. Unless there was a problem I could solve for someone. I enjoyed that. But did you know that people get really uptight about their houses and their money? Who knew? Crazy, right? So, one of my very best friends in the whole wide world left the bank to go work for, I'm going to say it, Teledyne Brown Engineering help desk. And he was like, "Hey, I know you went out of the bank. It's entry level help desk. Are you interested?" I was like, "Get me in the door, get me in the door, get me in the door, get me in the door." So I go and I interview. And I was able to land that job because one of the folks I was helping to write let me think, the Microsoft Office SharePoint Server 2007 Administrator's Pocket Consultant needed help editing it because some engineers wrote it and it wasn't really good English. He's like, "I can't pay you in money, but I can pay you in training and you can learn this SharePoint thing." And awesome, right? Right place, right time, honestly. So I go to interview for that help desk job and I was like, "I've installed Office 2007. Yes, that informs the era. And I know SharePoint." Hired. And 2 years later, I was the server admin. And I would not have traded that process for anything because when you sit down and tell people, "Hey, I know what it's like to be in the banking industry," and I saw mortgage and banking come up here in the questions just a second ago, right? You've come from these other areas in these industries. You know a little bit about things that aren't just IT, and I think that gives you more credibility when you start to work with these other business areas in our organization. Or for me as a consultant, I work with a lot of different industries. So I can say, "Hey, I came out of the DoD. Yeah, I was in mortgage and banking. Yeah, I get you." Right? It's from all over the place. Let's see what we got here. I see tech trainer, mortgage. Angelina accidentally fell into SharePoint in the training department. Oh, good for you. Mathematics degree. Oh, that's impressive. Mortgage and banking. Allison, I haven't seen you say what you wanted to be when you grew up. So you're here. You need to chime in. So let's go into Ashley. And feel free, you guys, to keep chiming in. Ashley, tell me your story.
So I love that the choice here for icon is the unicorn because it's right the one intentional SharePoint Pro that Joy knows, right? She likes to say that. Um, and it is kind of like that. I feel like I'm a somewhat intentional SharePoint Pro. So my story is that I went to school for history. I did some philosophy. I did a lot of art. Very much liberal artist. Very much thought I'd be a college professor, et cetera, et cetera. And I grew up with actually a SharePoint MVP as my dad. So he was one of the very first SharePoint MVPs. I grew up seeing what he was doing, watching him go around and travel and speak. And like any good teenage daughter, did not want anything to do with that while I was growing up. So, of course, doing all the liberal arts things. And I exited college and looked around and said, "Oops, what am I going to do?" I had no idea really what the path forward was other than more school. And I knew that I didn't actually want to go back to school. I wanted to start entering the workforce. Um, so after about a year kind of working, the part-time job I had turned into a full-time job. And then I looked around and I said, "Hey, Dad, how do I do what you're doing?" And he tells the story a lot better than I do. But basically, his response was, "Oh, no, girl, you, no, 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 I will not be sharing this with you. You are a liberal artist." And so I bugged him enough that he handed me literally a SharePoint 2010 for Dummies book and said,
Oh,
"Here."
I love
Yeah. He handed me that book and said, "Go read this. Here's access to an environment that I spun up for you. And then once you figure out what lists and libraries are, then we'll talk. So I taught myself doing some weekend work, reading through that book, and I was bound and determined to start a new career path there. Um, he took me on after that, and I was very lucky to be able to apprentice with him for a few years as he struggled to turn my right brain into a left brain. And I learned programming concepts on T-SQL and JavaScript rather, and it's I would never look back at this point. It's been 10 years and counting. I've held different jobs since then. I've been consultant for a very long time now, and I would not think of myself as anything but a SharePoint Pro and developer. So it really does go to show you that we enter this space from all different ways, and even when SharePoint is part of your life from a very young age, it's still something that I try to avoid. So
It's hard. It's a very blank canvas when it's first deployed. And it's like writing a book. That blank page is the most intimidating part. So it really does take effort and problem solving and working with people for sure.
yeah, so I think that at this point we are going to show you guys some of the meat of what you're here for. So the tools. If we have Joy, do
Oh,
we have anybody who's brought up any additional, what they wanted to be when they grew up?
let me see. I do have a fellow that admitted that he was kind of forced into being the SharePoint administrator because he knew SharePoint and the admin left. So I've heard of that happening before. Allison, so Allison is a new addition to the Pate group team. She declared that she does not want to grow up, so that question was invalid, but that she always wanted to do software development and web development and has discovered that she enjoys puzzle solving and collaboration. And that's a lot of SharePoint. All
All
right.
right. Yeah. So we've got three tools for you coming up and also two tips. And we've selected these based on what we think you guys could really sink your teeth into immediately, so get some real world use out of these even today when you come off of here. So the first one here I think is really more in Joy's space. I'm in here a lot, but Joy, you're probably in the admin center quite a bit. I think more than I am for sure.
I absolutely live in the admin center. So let me see. Let me end my slideshow and then I'll figure that part out later. And I'm going to share. I'm going to switch screens. I'm going to see if this lets me switch screens the way I want to. We'll get there eventually. So let me look at my audience view. Okay, so you should be seeing my Joy of SharePoint demo tenant. GoToWebinar says you are. So if you haven't been turned loose in the admin center yet, here's a little sneak preview of what's there. If you have, maybe you're not super familiar with it yet, we're gonna chat about it. So the best way to get to, or the way I get to it, I should not say the best way, because I'm usually already in SharePoint, is I come to the waffle or the app launcher, and somewhere in this list of apps, you will see admin. I will also point out if you are on office.com, there's a link to it here as well, right? Both roads lead to the same location. And it's also got a URL, right? So you can also get to it if you memorize your URL. But the first place you get dumped is the Microsoft 365 admin portal. I've got dark mode going. Welcome to the dark side. Let's see if brightening this up might help. I'm going to come down here all the way to the bottom. You see I've got my security center, compliance, SharePoint, all this. If this is all sprawled out for you and it annoys you, you can go to customize navigation and tell the admin center what you want to see here. It's also worth noting, if you are only a SharePoint admin, you will only ever see SharePoint there. So it'll kind of self-select for you. Since this is my fake tenant, there's really not a whole lot of stuff that can be hidden from me because I'm all there is. All right, SharePoint Admin Center, the first thing I hit is my activity report and my site usage report. You want analytics? You get a little bit right here. I'm not going to go super detailed into everything that's here, but notice I've got a details button. Opens it in another tab. I appreciate that. Some people don't, but you can start to drill into 180 days of file activity. Again, I am the only person in this tenant, so that's why you don't see a whole lot of impressive figures here. Super important, super important, super important, super important is this message center right here. If you are responsible for any part of Office 365 in any way whatsoever, read the message center. The term Microsoft uses for Microsoft 365 or Office 365 is evergreen. Evergreen means always growing, always active, always alive. So look, this updated feature, SharePoint Site Swap, that was released on the 22nd, or the message was released on the 22nd. Publishing commands are added to the Pages library. That was yesterday. That's two pretty big things happening within a couple of days, being announced within a couple of days of each other. Here's what I clicked on. It's giving me information. It gives me pictures, gives me a link to the roadmap. This is invaluable, folks. Do not go another day without going to the admin center if you have access to it and reading through what's going on. I've even subscribed to the email, so I get it in my inbox every Monday. And I try to take about an hour a week, sometimes more. Sometimes I have to play catch up and do 2 hours the next week and go through and read those messages. Okay, I think I've harped on that enough. Now, and I'll back up half a second and say this is the modern version of the admin portal. I'll show you the classic. If you're still running on classic and you've got teams going and people are creating modern sites, you're not going to see all your sites. You've got to be in the modern SharePoint Admin Center to see your modern sites. And here they are. So the recommendation for architecture, we don't create subsites anymore. Everything is its own top level site. That's awesome because now I can see all of my sites right here. If I were still doing nested subsites, I would never see that any of these had those. I'd have to really do some drilling in to see what I'm working with. By keeping everything its own standalone site, I got it right here. And what am I going to pick on? I'm going to pick on accounting, money, and finance because it's got the word money in it. So I see my site name. I see my URL. We all know those can be very different things depending on if the business wanted to change their name at some point. Obviously, I don't have a lot of money here because there's zero storage. I see that there's a group. I'm just going to keep following this line over so you can see the columns. It's associated with the Fun Hub. It's a team site. You can see the last time anybody accessed the site or did anything, when it was created. Great info here. Great info. Okay, I'm going to scroll all the way back to the left. To the left, to the left. That's a song? I think that's a song. I'm going to click on accounting, money, and finance. Doesn't open my site. If I clicked on the URL, that would open the site in a new tab. But here, this is kind of new and fancy. I can manage the site. Here's my general information. Okay, I'm going to go Southern. Y'all, look, I can edit this URL. Don't just go edit URLs though. There's a whole article about it. If you ping me and ask me for that article, I will find it and send it to you. If I go change this URL and there's anything in the recycle bin, poof, gone. All right. So we want to be very intentional. I've got a client that's asked recently, well, if I change the URL, will it lose its hub site association? I don't know. I actually need to go do that and test it, and I'll report back my findings because this is new. I don't know. I can edit the hub association. I mean, you just go to town on this, right? Maybe that's corporate. You can do all kinds of fun stuff. I can see a little glimpse of its activity. I can manage permissions, right? This is the Office 365 group, which tells me probably there's a Teams associated with this. If there isn't now, it's set up so there can be. And I can take a peek at owners. I love this. I can see who's here right off the bat without actually having to go dig into the site. It's really fantastic. And if there are any policies that have been configured, that is here as well. So if we had HIPAA data, if we had, what is it now, PPI or PHI, right? Any policies like that applied, I could see it. I love that. I love that. I love that. Let me see. What am I leaving out? Oh, site creation options. Having to cheat a little. So if I create from here, team site, you're going to get your Office 365 group, which means I could go to Teams tomorrow, 6 weeks, 6 months, build a team and connect it to this site. That's the big takeaway there. I'll also get a joint inbox and a shared calendar for everyone in that Office 365 group. Communication site, that's the cleanest site you can configure. That's what my demo tenant home page is, right? It's that really pretty, if you have someone like Ryan that makes it pretty, like he does for our company, site, lots of images, no Office 365 group. Maybe you want a site, but you don't want the Office 365 group. And click that other options. Let me do that again because I think I did it fast. Other options. Check this out. Now, I haven't played with this, I'll be real. But look what's hiding here. Classic stuff. I'll say again, I haven't gone, really? Are you really going to give me an old classic document center? I'm not sure. Maybe after the webinar, I'll go click it and find out. But I can get a modern team site with no Office 365 group. All right, I'm just going to cancel out of that. And I do like that here in the admin center, I can use the metadata. That's not what I wanted to do. Right here. That's great.
So
That's
I
what,
think it's actually because you've got it selected. I ran into this
oh,
yesterday.
okay.
I had exactly this problem.
That's what we in the trade call a user error. All right. Sweet. You're my hero. So filter by template. I just want to see my team sites. I want to see my classic. I want to see my communication. You can actually configure these views, and just like in a normal list or library, save it as a custom view. In fact, I think I have the one with the external sharing set to yes, save, so I can see what I've shared. And real quick, I'm going to go to settings over here in the left nav. This is where you can set your default admin experience. I've got it set to the new SharePoint Admin Center. That's my favorite. I recommend it. Site creation. Let's be real. Microsoft is very fond of letting us do whatever we want within the restrictions of our permissions, right? With this checked, I see create site on my SharePoint landing page. I see create site in OneDrive. I see create site in a lot of places. If I don't want my users to see that, I can just uncheck this box. If I want any sites that are created as team sites or from teams, which are team sites, to have /teams instead of /sites, I can do that right here. And then when you read your URLs, you know immediately that's a communication site or that's a team site. And you set your default time zone here as well. I think those are the biggies for that page. More features. We love features, right? That's why we're here. Manage your term store from here. Search. Apps. User profiles. So more features is here. I encourage you to explore it. I hope InfoPath goes away soon. It's supposed to be, what's its second funeral date now?
It's so funny. I don't know off the top of my head because I've been done with it for so long.
I know.
More InfoPath.
True story, true story. But yeah, that's kind of the ins and the outs. I hope that wasn't too fast of a sneak preview of the Admin Center. I'll also point out here you can get to your deleted sites as well. 93 days. You got 93 days to go get back any sites that you have deleted. After that, it is a ticket to Microsoft. If you delete a site that's got an Office 365 group associated with it, it's like tipping over a domino. It'll take a little while for that effect to spread because it'll delete the group, it'll delete the site. If there's Teams, it'll go delete that. All the assets will delete, but it takes time. There are timer jobs that are involved. So it may take many hours or a day for that to complete its deletion cycle, but it will eventually go away. It's a real thing. And then you can go get it back if you need to. All right. I think that's all I wanted to say here. Ashley, I know you've got some good tools lined up too.
I do, yeah. I've got a couple of them. And I would say that they are more on the Devi side if you are used to sort of thinking about administrative tasks as being in SharePoint in the admin center, and then sort of um, the tools for development, being more Devi. But there's some definite overlap where admins and devs can use both of these. So we'll pop right into the first one.
Oh,
Let's see. Oh, yeah. So just to back up for a second there, there's a lot of links that we're providing inside the deck here. So at the end, if you guys need those, just let us know because there's ways that we can show you how to access different things, different tools. So you'll see those flashing by as we do our demos.
yep, and the slides will be available after the webinar, so fear not.
Exactly. All right. So PowerShell. Um, so I want to just give you guys a little asterisk that says, I'm sorry if this feels scary. So um, I want to introduce PowerShell to you guys, even as newbies, even if you feel like this, oh my gosh, this is a step above, and what am I doing? Because PowerShell is really where all of the cool new features for administration starts. So if you think about some of the things that Joy was showing, like being able to elevate a site to a hub site, being able to associate sites to hubs, being able to change the URL, being able to swap out different sites and names and things, all of that can be accomplished in PowerShell. And typically, those new cool features are rolled out via PowerShell first, and then they become available in the admin center second. I think it was actually a pretty decent amount of time between being able to elevate a site to a hub and then when it actually became available as an action in the UI of the admin center. So I think that not only for developers, PowerShell is super powerful for developers who are trying to run scripts and create things, but this is also a great tool to understand as an administrator. So I want to give you guys, before I do a quick demo of PowerShell and kind of show you what that looks like, I'd like to just get you up to speed with some of the terminology. So when you download PowerShell for SharePoint, what you're doing is you're looking for SharePoint Management Shell. So when you do a Google search for this, and we do have the direct link inside the slides, but when you do a Google search for this, it's SharePoint Management Shell, and that's what you're looking for. And the reason you're looking for that is because that comes preloaded with all of the modules that you're going to need in order to run PowerShell against SharePoint Online. So there's some big terms there for you if you've never used PowerShell before. So SharePoint Management Shell module, and then when you are telling PowerShell what to do when you're actually writing something inside the console. What you're writing are commandlets, and those are your building blocks of the instructions that you're giving in order to tell SharePoint to do something. So I like to think of commandlets just as little Legos that you can put together to do cool things. You can string them together to do multiple actions sort of in one line or in multiple lines. Um, and they come in the form of verb and then the noun there. So it's get SPO site, add SPO site design, invoke SPO site swap. So you get the verb, so your get, add, or invoke, and then what it is you're doing that to, the noun, the site design, site swap, all that good stuff. So that's kind of the way that when you look at these things and you're trying to understand what is it that I'm choosing to do, it's actually very easy. It's right there for you. It tells you what it is. And there are tons of reference materials online. There's a great reference document that I'll show you in just a second when I share my screen. And that's where I go for pretty much everything. All right, so let me go ahead and start sharing my screen. And I'm gonna hope that I can.
Well, I'm going to stop sharing. It's always fun to dance this dance.
Ooh, I made myself the presenter. Here we go. All right, show my screen.
I see you.
Oh, fantastic. Good. All right, guys. So what I was just referring to was the reference guide that's online. And anytime you have questions, especially as a newbie, the documentation out there has gotten much better in recent years. This is a great place to start. Microsoft is making a concerted effort to get the latest and greatest information to us immediately through docs.microsoft.com, through all the different types of documentation that they have. So when I start a project and I'm trying to figure out what it is that I want to do and I want to build my PowerShell scripts, I always start from here, no matter how long I've been working with PowerShell, because new things are always available. And looking through here on the left, sometimes I can come up with a new idea because I say, oh, I didn't realize that this was available, or okay, this is how I want to accomplish the thing I want to do. So you can see that all of the commandlets are here for your reference. All right, let's pull up Management Shell. So when you open up SharePoint Online Management Shell, it looks like a console, and it is a console for, you might think of this as command line type of thing. And really, it's actually pretty easy to use. But the first thing that you need to do in order to run any commandlets against SharePoint Online is you actually need to connect to the tenant. So when you connect up to the tenant, that actually authenticates you as somebody who's allowed to hit the tenant with PowerShell. And if you're concerned at all, you do need to be a SharePoint administrator to do this. So your end users can't open up Management Shell and do some crazy things. You do actually have to have the rights to do that, since there's a lot of backend stuff that you can do with PowerShell. So let me show you real quick how you connect and what the experience is like. So I'm just going to do a good old copy paste here.
It's
And
cheating.
and I cheat all the time. Um, so basically what I want to show you guys is that when you do this, when you put in the commandlet here, it's connect-SPO service, and you will always start with this. And then we do a -URL to provide the URL that we want to connect to. And that defines the tenant that you are connecting up to. So we can see that this is my personal tenant. I'm connecting to the admin center there. So it's always AR space, which is my tenant name, -admin.sharepoint.com. So it's whatever tenant that you've got there. I'm gonna hit enter. And it's going to ask me to authenticate. So this experience is very common, right? So you know what this is. You can put in your email address there. Say next, put in your password, and then, okay, it seems like nothing happened, right? But I do want to point out to you guys that that was actually successful. You're not going to get back something that says this worked, except for the fact that you didn't get a bunch of red gook back. When it doesn't work, when PowerShell doesn't work for you, it's going to give you in big red letters all the things that didn't work and why. It's actually got pretty good error messages there. So this is actually a successful connection. And now I can run another commandlet. So I'm going to run get-SPO site. And this is going to bring me back a list of all of the sites in my tenant. And this is going to do that because I'm not providing a particular URL for it. If I wanted to, I could specify a URL and get back a whole bunch of information about a particular site. But just for our purposes, we'll just do a quick get-SPO site. That's thinking. and it's going to spit out all this information for me. And it does it in a formatted way, kind of ugly formatted over here, but you can see that I've got URLs. It shows me the owner, which is all me, and then storage quotas. So it's a great way to kind of get started if you want to poke around, connect up to the tenant, see what you can find, come to the reference guide here, and start hitting your tenant with those gets to kind of see what information is available and then reading through about what you can actually do. All right.
I still miss STS-ADM.
That's another conversation.
Oh.
All right, let's pop over to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we'll pop over just to the next slide to show the Power Automate, which is next. Let's see.
Mm. Oh, yeah, me. Sorry.
Guys, we'll do more of these and it'll be super smooth in like 2
I'm
more
used to
times.
hogging y'all, okay?
We got to share. Joy and I were actually talking about how we both need to learn to share.
Yes, I'm
This
the
is
baby of the
extra
family. It's mine.
So the next tool that I'm going to show you is Power Automate. And this is, along with PowerShell, one of my absolute favorite things to work in is the Power Platform, and particularly in Power Automate. So those of you might have heard Microsoft Flow. It has now been rebranded Power Automate as of the Ignite announcements last year. But you still make flows just with a little f. So Power Automate, you still make flows, little f. So Power Automate might seem like it's primarily a developer tool, again, kind of like the PowerShell there does, but there's also some great stuff in here for admins. So just go over some quick stuff here on the slide, and then we'll pop over to the demo. So for developers, for my newbie developers, this is a great intro into the development concepts. If you don't know how to code, but you're trying to get things done and you are feeling like a citizen developer and like, hey, I could take on, maybe some new learning here. It's a graphic interface. So you just basically drag and drop and build your logic inside of the flow. And so it's a great way to kind of get those concepts in your mind, talking about loops, talking about conditions, talking about variables, and it really increases your vocabulary when discussing development concepts. You can connect to different data sources. So this is not only limited to SharePoint, even though the context here is SharePoint. You can do things like connect to SQL, you can connect to third parties, you can even extend it if you are, a really comfy developer and you've done REST calls. You can do things like, HTTP actions and call out to third-party data. Super, super cool stuff. And for admins, you really do need to understand where the admin center is in Power Platform. It has its own particular admin center where you can have your God view of everything that's happening inside the Power Platform. So that's where you can see who's making flows, who's making apps, who owns them, who's a part of it. And it's a great way to sort of get that high level view of what's happening inside your tenant, even if you're not the one making things. And if you want to take it to the next level, there's a great way to basically marry PowerShell with Power Automate, and you can automate those PowerShell tasks that you might do on a repeated basis, but it is more advanced. All right, let me pop this over, change presenter. All right, so what we're going to do is just take a quick peek super fast here at Power Automate. This is the dashboard. So when you come into make your flows, you can enter from a few different ways. One is through the app launcher or office.com. You can click on the Power Automate icon, or you can enter via a SharePoint list by clicking flow and then create flow. But the way that I always come in, because I'm often in here, and so I just have to write flow in my URL and then it just kind of populates it for me. So once you've come here, you can just find the URL where you've been and just come straight into the dashboard. So that's what I typically do. But you come here and you have all of this different information available to you. We won't go over things like AI Builder and solutions today because it is a bit more advanced. But if you want to get yourself up to speed and start seeing what's available, you just come in and you go to My Flows. And then you can see here that I have a bunch of different flows that I've made that I have access to. If you add folks to your flows, they're going to then appear under team flows. And I don't have anybody else in this tenant except me, so I don't have any team flows. There's that sharing problem again. And what we have here is all the flows that I have access to. So I'm just going to open up my Joy of SharePoint approval. And you can see that I have sort of a mini dashboard here of all the things that are going on inside this flow. So I've got details, I can add details to this. Anytime that I run this, that's going to show up here, and there's more data that you can dig into when something's been run. You can see all the connections that are made inside here. You can see that I have a successful connection that's working against particularly SharePoint under this user account. And then you can see who the owner is. So you come in and you see that this is mine. And anytime you add other users, they're going to show up under here as well. So just going over to show you guys again that this is a graphic interface where you would build your logic out. You can add steps, which, you add actions. You have different connectors and things like that. You can add different triggers against SharePoint or manually trigger them. And it's as simple as typing in what you actually want to connect to. So I come here, click on SharePoint, and then I get all this great stuff that I can do against SharePoint, all the things that are supported. Okay, so I really encourage you guys to go ahead and open that up, take a peek, see what you want to do inside there. It really just kind of, get your hands dirty. I think that the best way to learn about it is by doing. And the only way that you can do that is by opening it up and playing around.
Totally agree. Don't be afraid to break things unless it's production. Don't break production. A couple of good questions coming in here. So let me back up in the question. So, can you tell which sites are associated with a team? And I answered that privately, and I want to kind of share that with the whole group. Not 100%. It'll show me which sites have an Office 365 group. That leads me to believe there's probably a team out there, but it could be that we went ahead and created the site and we're preparing to teamify it at some point. To really get a good look at everybody that's got a team, the team's admin center will give you that 100%. Here are all my teams. Because if you have a team, you 5,000% have a SharePoint site. Right, so that's a good place to go. Some companies really divvy up that access, so your SharePoint admin and your teams. If that's what your company does, become best friends at work, right? Because you really will have to work together a lot. PowerShell, do you have any recommended training site to learn more? Is it easy to self-teach?
Yeah, so I am self-taught and it's a bit of a ramp up. I don't have any recommendations off the top of my head, so I think that could be a great follow-up, right, Joy? I think we could maybe do that
Absolutely.
as far as finding some training for folks. But my guess is that there's a lot out there because that's how I did learn was just via blogs and trying to understand, just from Googling, really. And that's just it's the way it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Laura commented that her tenant does not allow them access to the admin center. She's looked for places to get the message center messages without having that access. So how do you get them, right? And you said what I was going to say before I read the rest of your answer, the roadmap. Going to the roadmap is super important. Outside of the roadmap, and the user voice. That requires more work. If you go to user voice and you follow things that they say they're working on, you'll get a message when they update it to, we're rolling it out, it's in development. You'll get status updates that way. I get a lot of my info, and Ashley and I have a whole 2 slides, I think, devoted to Twitter. Believe it or not, don't roll your eyes at this. People always say, oh, but Twitter has so much garbage on it. It's your choice whether you follow the garbage or not, right? So my Joy of SharePoint account is 99% Office 365. Okay, 97% Office 365, and then 3% dogs and wine. So no garbage, right? Choose to follow things, and we'll give you more info on that in just a second. Let me see, was there something else? When you share a flow and you leave the organization, bum, 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 does that team flow stay for other people, even though your organizational profile is deleted or inactive?
All right. So this is a super important one. So I definitely want to address it. So I'm trying to give you as concise of an answer as possible. So you should not, for best practices, you should not be creating production level flows or apps under your named user account. So in the default environment, and I'm going to say some stuff we didn't go over, but in the default environment, everybody has access to make flows against data that they have access to, but that is really not the appropriate place to create a production level application that is going to be shared with multiple people. The way to do that is to have a service account. And the service account is licensed the same as any other Office 365 user, but it maintains um, the ownership of that application, so of the flow or the app. And that way, when the person leaves and the profile is deleted, that flow is still available to be exported into another environment or under a different user or something like that. The other way to do that, if you don't want to use service accounts and you do want to do it under a named user, or it's been made under a named user already, is just to put into place some good practices and guidelines in your offboarding process to not delete the profile until you've done an audit in the Power Platform Admin Center to see what that account actually has access to and what that account owns. So you don't want to delete that person. Maybe you just want to change the password and then have your administrators take care of exporting that and then importing it under a different named user. So there's a few ways around it, but definitely best practices are you've got to plan for it. You've got to handle it. So hopefully that helps.
Good stuff. So we got a couple more questions, but I hate to say but, we're going to tear through these last, I think 2 or 3 slides and then answer the rest of the questions at the end. So I hope you all are okay with that. But I'm going to get trucking here, but don't go away if you can stay with us. Actually, this answers one of those questions, which is, what do you recommend if you want more training in Office 365 and SharePoint? You got to keep learning. Where do you start? I got some links for you. Again, these slides will be made available, but I'm going to have my contact info at the end of this, so you can also email me and go, no, I need it now. Tech community, go there, check it out. The blogs are amazing. Go to spsevents.org, find a SharePoint Saturday, Office 365 Saturday, Microsoft 365 Saturday near you. They're all over the world. They're amazing. Most people's first response is, I don't want to do SharePoint on a Saturday. You don't know what you're missing. It is so fun, and you get fed, and they have prize drawings. And my dog just snorted really loud in the background. I'm going to apologize for that. That will be recorded forever. But they're amazing. We really recommend that. There are webinars like this all over the place. And in fact, I shamelessly plugged my own. So on my blog, I have a page with all of the previous webinars. You can go watch those. Microsoft Mechanics is amazing. They have a Teams for IT series that they're doing. They cover so many areas of the ecosystem. They're fantastic. The community forums are fantastic. Okay, next slide. It's us.
Yay! So, so of course, talking about shameless plugging, we have a lot of fun teaching users at different community events. So there's a couple of things here that I would highly recommend. I know Joy would definitely recommend as well. Is go find a local user group, be it for SharePoint or Office 365 or the Power Platform. There's usually a lot of choices. And sometimes mashups where they do it all at once, and then everybody kind of gets together at once. So find a local user group. It's a great way to meet people who are doing the same things that you are and who might have the same questions that you do. Or they have different experiences and they're able to share with you different paths and different learning paths that you might be interested in. So definitely go seek out your local user group. Find local SharePoint Saturday or Office 365 Saturdays. These are free for you. So they're put on because sponsors would love to talk to you. So check out the sponsors who sponsor the events because they make them possible, and they make them free. And it's a place where experts come to teach you new things, to share their knowledge, and they do that for free as well. So it's one of those things where it's all about community. So go find a SharePoint Saturday, Office 365 Saturday, support it, go learn, go ask questions. Everybody who's there is there to help and wants to help you. And finally, plugging Twitter again, follow all the Microsoft related accounts that you can find. There is a great wealth of knowledge out there. There are tons of community calls where anyone can join and you get the latest and greatest information. And it's also another great way to kind of ping somebody for a question, and tag them on Twitter and say, hey, I'm having this problem. I see that all the time. I've answered a few myself. It's just a great dialogue for everybody.
So another slide, advancing bonus tools.
Yeah, so bonus tools. These are things that I included at the end of my presentation when I did this, and I thought that they would be, oh, we went back to the community. I'm going back. So I thought that these would be super helpful for you guys, especially if any of you might be a little more advanced and less on the newbie side. Check these out. It's things like the Graph Explorer, where you can test connections against the graph before you implement them, either in SPFX or in Power Automate. There's also Azure DevOps. It's a place very much for storing and maintaining your projects and your code. You're also going to want to take a peek at portal.azure.com if you're doing more advanced things, maybe with Azure Active Directory or running PowerShell from a flow. And then finally, the community forums where you can ask questions of anybody. There are super users out there who are waiting to answer your questions. And I really mean that they are monitoring the forums consistently and are so glad to help out. So post questions on the forums, post clear questions, post lots of screenshots. People are there to help you. And then, of course, all of the admin centers, which Joy did show you how to get to if you have access to them. So lots of good bonus stuff right there.
And these are our favorite Twitter accounts. And we tried to keep them at more of like organizational accounts. We do have favorite people, but we didn't want to pick favorites. That MSFT 365 status, y'all remember when Teams was down a couple weeks back, the beginning of the month? That was the place to go to find out who, what, when, where, why, and how. They will let you know when weird stuff's happening, what's going on, and what you can expect. Super important. Microsoft releases information via these accounts on Twitter before almost any other outlet gets it. This is the place to go. I promise you. We're not just trying to trick you into getting into social media. Oh, look, there's SPS events again. They're everywhere. Twice. One with an underscore, one without. Oh, that's like, I guess you have to figure out which one is right. I'll have to go look. I'll fix that before we release the slides. I'm going to go ahead and flip over to our contact information, but we had a question. Can you limit who can create teams? Yes, you absolutely can, dot, 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 but it does require a premium license. But you can actually, what you have to do is limit who can create an Office 365 group. I've got some information and I've got these questions here. I will get you the link to that. I believe it's on docs.office.com on how to restrict the creation of Office 365 groups. Yes, you can be done. It does require a policy, PowerShell, and an elevated license. Oh, you are very welcome. Let's see, who have I forgotten? And you all are rock stars for hanging in here with us, even though we're going late. I don't see any questions that I've missed, but that doesn't mean I'm right. If you have any questions, go for it. I'm gonna declare this question time. If you gotta go, because you've been staring at the clock going, look, lady, you're going over, I gotta run. I get it. And we have had some folks that had to drop off, but please. Any recommended books are online since for the best since it moves so fast. Online, you want to go to support, is it support.office.com, Ashley? The actual Microsoft learning site. I'll include that in the links when we update the slides. They document it the best because they're the ones rolling out the changes. Support.office.com. If you've been around a while, you remember a long time ago, and if you're with Microsoft and you're hearing me say this, I'm so sorry, but you know it's true. A long time ago, the online support stuff wasn't the best, and it was usually a little bit lacking. That is not the case anymore. They're the place to go. Support.office.com. They've got little videos. You can link to it on your help links on your intranet for people. It's really great. What else? Okay. Yeah, you're very welcome, Scott. Appreciate you being here. All right. Well, groovy. I'm not seeing a lot of questions come in. Um, if you all have any recommendations that you would like to see in a future webinar, I am working on trying to convince one of my coworkers to do an Azure one. That's come up a few times. We are working on getting something like that scheduled, but if you have any topics or ideas that you'd like to see, let me know. Ooh, we just got a big question. Is there a security reason why an IT department will not give you access to the admin center? Can be answered offline. Okay. And there are, because you could just go do crazy stuff if you wanted to, but sometimes I think it's they don't understand the need. But yeah, I'll hit you up in a one-on-one and we'll talk through kind of what your situation is, what you're going through. Sometimes people just don't share well. And sharing is caring, right? It's called SharePoint for a reason. All right. Recommendations for sessions come. Oh, in Branson? Oh, so Ashley and I are both speaking in Branson.
I was going to say,
Plug
can
it,
we be selfish?
plug it. So you have to go see ours. You have to get up early on the first morning to come see mine. But because Mark likes to torture me, he knows I'm not a morning person. But oh, I'll get that back to you, Scott. There's some great ones. Actually, we'll need to get your favorites too. I don't want to play favorites with something that's being recorded. But definitely come see my session, Ashley's session, um, Classic Rob, our own Rob Windsor speaking. Ashley and Mark are doing a Teams workshop. I mean, there's all kinds of good stuff happening. And I feel comfortable plugging my own company stuff, so that's cool. Oh, the SharePoint admin. Oh, that'll be good too. And come find us, Scott. Come up, say, I'm Scott from the webinar. Find us. I'm easy to find because my hair kind of glows, but
And I'm easy to find because I'll be with her.
right, we will be inseparable for the whole thing. Well, fantastic. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to officially end the. Will you do LA anytime? Oh, we were just in San Diego. Ashley, are you doing LA? Do you have a
Um,
California thing?
so I have my fingers crossed for the Orange County SharePoint Saturday. So that's I'll find that out whether or not my submissions were accepted in a couple weeks here. So fingers crossed.
I think that's the weekend I'm waiting to hear back from Minneapolis.
Yes.
I'm sure the weather will be just the same.
Oh yeah, sure. We'll compare pictures.
Sure. Yeah, no, let's not. All right. All right. Last call. Awesome. I'm going to officially stop the recording, but we can stay.